Hi guys, let's look now the life of top world-class magician Paul Daniels, a life in pictures. Let's go guys. Hi guys, I thought today I'd have a little chat about the great magician of course from my youth, 1980s and 1990s. Of course, Paul Daniels, Britain's best magician of course, 1980s and 1990s of course. So he's a world-class magician, came from the United Kingdom, and an extraordinary magician. I wanted to have a look at a little video on his life story a little bit, because he was a great magician, great entertainer, and well known, okay, around many parts of the world actually as a great magician of course. But one of the best magicians of the 20th century actually, to be honest, looking back at him. One of the greats, along with Copperfield, probably Stephen Roy, Lance Burton, one of the great magicians, seriously, Chris Angel. He's a great magician. So let's have a little biography, a little look back at the amazing life of Paul Daniels, the world's, Britain's great magician, of course. He was born in 1938, actually, up in Middlesborough, northeast England. And he had a modest childhood, I think, up there in the northeast England area. I think his father was a cinema projectionist and worked in that kind of theatre kind of environment. So he had kind of a bit of a spark of showbiz, but he wasn't from a show business family, technically. He was from a normal kind of family, really. And he went in, I think he kind of went in the army at the age of 18 and stationed in Hong Kong for a period of time. That was quite good for him. And he was known. I met a guy, actually, who was in the army with him, actually, like in the 1950s. And he was known for doing card tricks, actually, back in the army in those days. He was quite a fairly young magician. He went on to become a member of the Middlesborough Magic Circle in the 1960s, late 50s, and became quite a name up in sort of northeast area doing magic kind of shows and things. Yeah, I think he had a wife assistant as well, his first wife, who he married back in the 1960s, and was married to her, 3 kids with her actually, 3 children with her. And her name was Jackie, and he was married to her for quite a long time during the 1960s. I think he got divorced from her in 1975, and that was his first wife. And he became an internal auditor for local council up in the northeast of England. He became a grocer, mobile grocer as well, had a grocery stall, and carried on doing that during the 1960s. But he was also performing a double life, performing magic. He's a magic act in clubs and things in the northeast of England. And he kind of got on the northeast, of what they call the northern circuit of entertainers and magicians. People were on that circuit of entertainers. Everyone was on it. Bernard Manning was on it. People like Shirley Bassey was on it. Very famous entertainers were in the 1960s and 70s. In 1969, Paul Daniels, originally called Newton Edward Daniels, he changed his name to Paul Daniels, became a professional magician illusionist, and he took his act with him around the place during the 1970s. He got on various TV shows, Opportunity Knocks in 1970. I believe he came second, he didn't win it, with Hughie Green. He also appeared also on shows such as the Wheel Tappers and Shunters show, which is the kind of northern club show, with, as I say, with acts like Frank Carson and Bernard Manning and those kind of acts as well. I met Bernard Manning myself, before Magic him myself, about 20 years ago. He was a big entertainer. Paul Daniels was kind of from that kind of arena of northern entertainers, also like people like Ken Doll as well from north of England. Was famous as well in the kind of club circuit in the 1970s, and Paul Daniels carried on in that kind of circuit, performing around the place. And I believe he was earning really good money back in those days in the sort of northern working men's clubs arena, Sheffield, Bradford, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, these kind of places he's performing in, and he was really well known in the north of England particularly. And he was trying to get a break on television, and in 1977 or so he had a TV show for ITV in the UK called For My Next Trick with John Wade and Terry Seabrook. And then he also then went on to have another show, Paul Daniels Blackpool Bonanza, for the ITV network in the UK as well, back about 1978. And in 1979 he eventually got a contract with BBC Television in London, England, okay, to take on his own TV show called the Paul Daniels Magic Show, which ran, actually amazing enough, one of the longest running shows ever for Magic actually. It ran from 1979 to 1995, and on it he had an assistant with him, of course, who joined him, called Deb McGee, who later became his wife. And so Paul Daniels, by about late 70s, early 80s, became a kind of household name in the United Kingdom and also in Europe, I think, and famous in other parts of the world, I think Australia too, with his shows, BBC solo shows around the world actually. It became quite a a rather large entity in show business actually in that period of time. He started doing some really big tricks on the show, but he was a kind of a stand-up magician. He didn't really do illusions so much initially. He had a routine of doing the cups and balls, one cup, one ball called a chop cut, which is his signature trick. He loved that. He even told me that was his best trick and I shouldn't do it because it was his favourite trick. That's a true story, and I met him in 1987. But also, he also had other big tricks. He would do linking rings. He did four linking rings routine. He would do vanishing a £10 note, and it would appear inside an egg, inside a walnut and a lemon. That trick as well. He did that an awful lot on his show. He also did electric chairs. People leap off chairs. I was involved with that myself. That trick actually, he did it on me, and he performed those tricks. They were actually quite low budget tricks, but he did really well on his stage show. He did 6-card repeat. He did unequal ropes, so the ropes changed lengths. Couple store rope routine. He did many of those sort of tricks he did in his act in that period. And he did many summer seasons. Great Yarmouth 1979. I think he did Bournemouth 1980. He eventually got, along with the TV show, he got a big West End debut in 1980, some 45 years ago, with the big show called It's Magic. And on that he performed a lot of 2 hours of magic every night of the week. I think 6-7 nights a week. He performed the It's Magic show in the Prince of Wales Theatre, Western London. He was about 40 at the time, so he was quite youngish, but he wasn't a spring chicken either. He was, he was kind of middle-aged, but it was a really great show. I remember that show so well. I saw it myself. And that, I think, holds a record for the longest running magic show in Western and London. It was on for almost, I think, 80 months or so. There's a big magic show at Prince of Wales Theatre, Leicester Square. He did a lot of stuff in that show. I recall, levitation, the Star Wars levitation, he levitated himself like a Star Wars kind of character, and did a costume change. He did all his main tricks. He opened up with chop cups and balls, and went on to do a variety of stuff. Backstage, the magician was one of the routines he did. And as a magic historian myself a little bit, it's a very interesting to see what he did in that show, go back to it. And also the big finale was electric chairs trick, where people had electric shocks and jumped off chairs. Members of the audience literally got shocked and jumped off chairs. It was a great trick done by many magicians since that actually, but he was a great artist at that particular trick. He also did a show, a big show, Blackpool 1983, big summer season, Summer Magic, which I saw that as well. I used to travel the country to see where he was. I was a big fan, and so I went to see Summer Magic, and that was his big show, Blackpool. He did also the Noah's Ark Illusion, that big show, Blackpool, in the Winter Gardens, Blackpool, the Opera House, Blackpool, I think it was. The big stage, and he did a trick at a small box, and out of the small box appeared like 1,000 people, out of the small little box. It was a great trick, and he did his act, and very substantially. A very big star back in 1983. He was on television all the time, and the big show he had at Blackpool that year, 1983.
Say, slow down. I don't like to move too fast. It drowns the truth with things that are not real, and I really want us to be real with love that lasts. In the past I messed up, gave too much. What is it with time? Why can't we unwind? And all the hurt we deal with, I wanna leave my cares behind. And now that time has passed, I see why we are lonely. Ooh, should've let me speed it up. You could've had more of me.
Amazing. It's probably the last ever the really big kind of big sort of summer season shows. had in the United Kingdom, and he had one of those big shows. Actually, I remember that really, really well, with Deb McGee assisting him as well, plus other guys too. His son also helped. His son Martin was a magician, of course, and also took part in many of the tricks, and also came and helped him out on many tricks as well. I remember quite clearly, very early on in his TV shows, Martin Daniels did the Houdini water torture cell escape on one of the Christmas specials that Paul Daniels did. And so Martin, his son, he was I think 20 odd at the time, quite young, was very involved with the magic show actually that particular time, and he had his own career on television as well for a few years. He became a star himself, Martin Daniels, but he never quite reached the heights of his father, Paul Daniels, of course, who became really big magician, as we all know. And Paul Daniels also did other TV shows. He also took on another show called Odd One Out. He did another TV show, quiz game shows. He became a game show host. He had Every Second Counts, Wipeout as well, which was carried on, I think, into the 1990s. He was doing quite a these big game shows along with the magic shows. The BBC wanted to do more magic shows, but he just couldn't do them. There was not enough material, so he ended up doing more and more these kind of game shows. And he appeared in many TV shows actually, just guesting as interviewee, as Parkinson Show and things, as a kind of a guest artist interviewee as well. And also was very present at the time when people like Tommy Cooper died in 1984. He was around then, and in many ways, in the 1980s, no one else could touch him really. He was always getting lots of ratings. The Magic Show at BBC One got like 18-20 million viewers often over those years, and no one else could really touch him in the ratings really with magic. He was up against many other really good artists like Cedar Black, Michael Barrymore. Many artists came along, but no one really overtook him. In 1989, Wayne Dobson, brilliant magician from Leicester, also a similar kind of comedy pattern magician. Wayne Dobson also got a TV show for about 3 years, but even he didn't really manage to get the crown off Paul Daniels as sort of Britain's big magician really, and that was back in the very early 1990s. And Wayne Dobson was a similar, comedy patter type magician as well. The sort of magic I love doing as well, comedy kind of patter kind of magic, which is some of the best kind of magic really. And during the 80s, Paul Daniels' magic show, along with his producer John Fisher, he had Ali Bongo, Gil Leaney on it as well, other people on helping out and producing the magic show. Also, that very famous magician Billy McComb also was involved in it for a time. Irish magician as well was involved in it. He was a really good guy, and they kept on churning out lots of tricks every year on the magic show. There was a lot of competition, slight competition in the early 80s and mid 80s from David Copperfield in America. Copperfield was doing really high ratings, these big magic shows, walking through Great Wall of China, vanishing airplanes, vanishing Statue of Liberty, escaping from Alcatraz, challenging Bermuda Triangle. And these big, massive shows. I think Paul Daniels in Britain was slightly, they didn't have the budget really to do those big things, so they started doing some big tricks actually at one point. Paul Daniels, he walked through a wall of China mugs. That was really good. He vanished the TV camera on the show. It was really impressive. He also did a number of really big stunts. He did the Indian rope trick really well. That was done at Longleat House down in Wiltshire in southwest England. The Indian rope trick. He did outside as well actually. Really amazing. Also fished for Loch Ness Monster, believe it or not. I think he tried to catch Loch Ness Monster at one of his shows. He also did a massive escape stunt at Silverstone racetrack in 1985. He vanished an elephant in a show around about 1988 with Johnny Morris. Actually vanished an elephant in the middle of a field. It was really baffling as well. It's a great vanishing elephant, one of the best I've ever seen of his shows. He also took on so many big tricks, many escapes. The Chinese water torture escape he did at least 2 or 3 times. He also, as I remember really clearly, did a big show in 1985, which was a really spectacular show called the Easter Show, Paul Daniels' Easter Special. It actually won a big award. It won the Golden Rose in Montreux TV Festival in 1985. That's the year of Live Aid. That was a big year, wasn't it? And Paul Daniels won the big TV awards that year, and it was a massive celebration at Dorchester Hotel with all the celebrities. Remember that. So again, again, Daniels was really at the forefront of television at that period, and of course he won this big TV award, beating off other TV shows like Spitting Image and other big TV shows to become the biggest TV show of the year in 1985. So it was a big award for the Paul Daniels show, the BBC at the time. And along with, he was a big star along with other people like Noel Edmonds, the British stars. He was really, really a big star at the time, and certainly getting all the viewers in. Certainly Paul Daniels was at the particular time of his life. He also did a big escape, I remember, above a pride of lions in Blackpool Tower Circus in 1987 or 88. I remember that. A very dangerous escape. He did high up above the audience. I remember very clearly, I met him in 1987 at the height of his success. I met him, I think it was in Weston-super-Mare. He did a show there. I met him at a convention, and he was very annoyed because there'd been some television tragedy where someone had tragically been killed during an escape act on the Noel Edmonds show. And I remember meeting Daniels, and he said he did escape act himself for his show, and it had been cancelled because of what happened on the Noel Edmonds show. It was a tragedy. I remember the public had been killed trying to do an escape act. And Daniels eventually, as I say, he wasn't involved in it, but he had to postpone his own, some of his magic because of that tragedy. So that was, but as I say, Paul Daniels had nothing to do with that. It was a completely different show. It was a tragedy happened on the Noel Edmonds show. But anyway, that's obviously long forgotten, of course, and Daniels carried on with his magic show despite the problems that do surface in entertainment show business with various things that do happen. In 1987, he did court controversy. He did a Halloween show down in Clarendon House in Surrey in the south of England, and he locked himself in an Iron Maiden, a kind of metal box full of spikes, and he was trying to escape from the box, but the door was shut. It looked like he'd been killed himself in the box. But later when he appeared, they said it was just all a big fake stunt. He hadn't been killed, but he looked like he faked his own death. It was 1987. It was a Halloween special he did, and a lot of papers and media got very angry with Paul Daniels and his producer John Fisher and the BBC about that stunt. It looked like he had been killed because it was just an illusion, it was just a trick. But nevertheless, some people thought that the show might get cancelled because of the pretense that he'd been killed in this Iron Maiden escape illusion. It was just a bigger trick. It was just an illusion. It wasn't real. And Dan was kind of moved on from that controversy, and he did another Halloween show the following year. In that Halloween show in 1988, he did dabble in some sort of weird kind of occult things, even doing stuff like Ouija boards and things. And again, he drew some criticism towards dabbling with some kind of strange kind of sides of magic. Maybe more related to Aleister Crowley. But Paul Daniels later on dismissed that, saying he was really not a believer in this sort of stuff. It was just all trickery and magic, and none of it's real. It's just all magic tricks, and he just dismissed all that sort of stuff. But he didn't dabble in that kind of magic particularly, and stuck to mainstream showbiz kind of magic really. But he did do those Halloween shows, and they're both on YouTube and both worth watching, the Halloween shows, if you're interested in magic. They really are good shows on it as well. And also I think he revealed that Deb McGee, who he married in 1988 in Buckinghamshire, her birthday I think is Houdini's birthday, is now Halloween, October 31st or something. So it was interesting link there, as I say, with that. But Paul Daniels carried on during the 1980s, carried on doing shows. He had quite a big, on the TV shows, he had quite a lot of clever patter routines. He did the Bunko Booth, where he played like a fairground trickster. That was a great part of the show. And also he did a thing which was very impressive, kind of mind reading under laboratory conditions, where he did, psychic tricks and mind reading tricks and mentalism type tricks, and explored that area of magic really, really well, actually, mind reading and that kind of thing. Daniels was very, very outspoken person in many ways. He did like to say what he thought. He was very anti some, sort of people who like Uri Geller type characters who he thought were tricksters and psychics. He was very anti-psychics and mediums and that kind of stuff, and didn't like that sort of stuff. Was quite vocal about that sort of stuff, and critical of scientists and that sort of stuff, and spoon benders. And he didn't like those kind of performers particularly, and was very outspoken. He didn't really believe in the occult world particularly. He was very much believing in that magic and was trickery and that kind of stuff. It was all just artistry and trickery. So it's very interesting regarding Paul Daniels in that kind of era and what he was interested in doing. He also was a big expert in memory. He did another TV special on memory, just how to learn and memorise things. That was a big hit back in the 1980s. I think particularly in the 90s, the big 1990s, and when other channels, ITV, got Wayne Dobson on and Best of Magic, and they started, I think what his producer John Fisher, who'd been his long-term friend and helper on the show, went over to ITV, a different TV channel, sort of defected away from Paul Daniels in about the late 1980s, and did shows for other TV channels, and Daniels was kind of like left on the BBC, perhaps not having quite the same backup. And I think the last few years, in the 1990s, he stopped in 1995. He wasn't quite so good. He was over 50 years old, and I think the last few years he was never quite as good as he had been back in his younger days. But he was still, getting viewers in, and he was getting 8, 9, 10 million viewers in the 1990s. But I don't think the Magic Show was quite as popular as it had been in the early days. So he was always looking for artists and magicians to come on the show. Many people came on the show, from Alan Shatson to Eugene Berger, and Jeff Mcbride, many other magicians, even Lars Burton was on it. Many other magicians appeared on the Magic Show over the years and supported Daniels. Even I remember Daniels and Ricky Jay were in a tremendous routine together. Ricky Jay, the great American magician. And so, if you go through the tapes of Paul Daniels' Magic Show on YouTube and stuff, you see many great magicians and artists who performed on the Paul Daniels Show back in those days, actually. But in the 1990s, as it happens with show business, and Daniels was hitting towards 60 years old. He was beginning to get a lot older, and the showbiz mentality was moving onwards, different things. Copperfield America was probably, starting to phase out TV shows a bit and do these big things. And also there was the rise of other magicians like David Blaine with street magic, card magic, and sort of showbiz magic kind of slightly went out of fashion in the mid-1990s. And Paul Daniels himself did 1995 his final TV series called Secrets, which was set in a kind of mock nightclub environment, and in that environment he went on to do extraordinary kind of tricks and stuff in that kind of sort of fake kind of showbiz kind of environment, this sort of nightclub environment he did on the Secret Show in 1995. But he never quite, he was still really good, was never quite perhaps as good as he had been back in his heyday. It was pretty extraordinary, actually. Moving on from that period, in 1995, Paul Daniels later admitted that BBC had dropped him in the end about 95, when his TV shows, his quiz shows and Magic Show had ended, and he had apparently made some quips about the Director General Alan Yentob in a negative way, apparently, and this apparently led to him being dropped by the BBC. But he wasn't picked up by any other networks. Tom was and did not appear on television at all much after 1995. In fact, he was approaching the age of 60. He did keep on doing other shows, and he appeared in around about 2002 on the sort of satirical show Louis Theroux. He went around various entertainers and made shows about entertainers and the kind of weirdnesses. And Louis Theroux did a show on Paul Daniels, and he tried to explore why Paul Daniels finished the BBC. He also took on other performances. I think he appeared in around about 2009, 2010 on another sort of tour with other entertainers. And this time Paul Daniels was sort of hitting about 70 years old, so he was getting pretty old that period. He'd been living, as far as I know, in at Roger Moore's house, apparently down in Denham area in Buckinghamshire, and he moved to, in the 1990s, or that period with Denby, they moved to a beautiful house on the river at Wargrave in sort of Buckinghamshire area, I think, in Berkshire area, near Henley-on-Thames, and they'd been living a very idyllic life by the river there, with the garden being flooded and swans passing by on the river at this place in Henley-on-Thames. And Paul Daniels was living there, and I think in a very, very lovely kind of location during the last sort of 15, 20 years of his life. And he was living thin near London, but he was doing odd appearances and odd bits and pieces and that kind of thing. He did make a video, and did write a book and stuff about show business, about magic, entertainment, how to be big in show business, how to make it in show business, big magician. And he did make a video which is available on the internet about his life. He also did make some YouTube videos chatting about tricks, illusions and stuff in his life at his house down in Buckinghamshire area, Berkshire area where he was living. And I think he did sort of chat quite a lot about his life and about his career and his friendship with magicians like Hans Moretti, that kind of stuff, and also his favourite magician, Jonny Paul, who really loved Jonny Paul, Las Vegas magician, that kind of stuff. And it was interesting. We talked all about his stuff. People probably don't know what's about Paul Daniels. He did actually get quite a lot of interesting awards. He was in 1982. He won the Society American Magicians Award in America. He also appeared in Las Vegas, believe it or not. He had his own show in Las Vegas for a time around 1982. And he said he was offered a large amount of money to stay in Las Vegas as a kind of resident magician, but he didn't take it and stayed back in the UK. So he never made a big career in America, but he had the chance to. He was really that good a magician. He was a great chatter, great orator, great talker, quite extraordinary. He was still doing shows. He was doing a sort of pantomime. I think it was Ipswich in 2015 towards the end of his life with Debbie. He was doing a sort of pantomime, and he was doing various sort of provincial theatre engagements and doing various shows around the country, driving a van around and still doing shows around the country up to that 2015. And that after the Ipswich show in 2015, the following year he was, I think January, February 2016, he was diagnosed tragically with a brain tumour, and he passed away in early 2016. So he had a very, very good life. He died about the age of 76 years old, which is maybe a little young, but in a way also he did have a very, very great life. And I know his family, Martin and his sons, his three sons, are very, very, very sad. Of course, the family, Debbie, was very sad at her loss, obviously, and she has done very well herself after his death, carving out a career in show business, appearing on Strictly Dancing and Loose Women in very many chat shows and stuff, keeping up the magic assistant thing on television. And she's a wonderful person. They married in 1988, and she's, I think, 20 years his junior. So obviously, she was left behind. But hopefully that's a bit of a look at the wonderful, interesting life of a big, UK magician who was known around the world and many parts of the world. He was pretty famous, and I think YouTube's great. YouTube now showcases a lot of his magic, and to see his magic around the world on YouTube and on the internet that maybe you didn't even see back in the day. You can still see it now on the internet and celebrate this guy's life. And this guy did, I think, 120 TV shows and hundreds of magic tricks and illusions on television over the 16 years he was on television, and lots of stuff. And also he was very, very clever at patter, combining patter comedy magic with magic itself. Now, he was never a sort of slick illusionist type, Lance Burton type magician. He was really very funny kind of magician, comedy magic, and did it really, really, really well, and so is honoured certainly by many, many, many people. His act really remains a solid magic act. His cup and ball routine will always be remembered. One of the best tricks of all time, I think so, his cup and ball routine, chop cup, and also his linking rings performances. Still to this day, I still think his linking rings performance he did is one of the best ever linking rings I've ever seen in my life. Just from the comedy angle, the timing, performance, the script, the jokiness, the clever gags. His linking rings were one of the best I've ever seen in my life. I remember him bringing the house down when I saw him performing that on stage. I was about 16 years old, and I saw him performing that. And he brought the house down just with linking rings, and he was great at performing just straightforward magic on stage. Not let's say big pretty magic, but really great magic with great performance, timing, script and comedy. He was a brilliant magician. There he is. He's buried, I believe, up in the Berkshire, Amersham, Buckinghamshire, Berkshire area, has been in 2016. Great magician, wonderful magician. I know that some people did go out. I did go out to the grave to see if I could find his grave, but I didn't actually unfortunately find when going to Amersham cemetery area, I didn't actually see a grave for him. I don't know if there was a headstone for him. I don't know whether he was a great religious guy or not religious guy, but certainly I think we'll try to find his grave. Haven't found it, so hopefully if one day if I can go back again, we'll find out where exactly Paul's ashes are scattered. But a wonderful magician, the great magicians of all time. and certainly a big entertainer in the United Kingdom, one of the biggest, most famous magicians the UK ever had, and probably the best magicians of the 20th century, certainly United Kingdom, Britain ever had. Wonderful magician, northeast of England, the wonderful life of a great artist, entertainer, comedian, magician, that was Paul Daniels.